program tonight, we are going to discuss some of the matters that's happened over the last week here in the country that pertains to what they call weapons of mass destruction, and we're going to talk about the senseless killings that has taken place with the gunman that goes in crowded places, most of the time places to where there are no arms, where it's illegal to carry arms, and they go and shoot it up and kill people. We're going to talk about weapons of mass destruction. We're going to talk about a society that has now become de-Christianized. Yet the spiritual aspects of this country is never considered in the problems. Why are kids and young people doing what they are doing today? Because they're not raised, they're not trained. The Bible tells us that we are to train up a child in the way the child is to go. And if we do that, then we will give some guidance to their lives, both in the ages that we're raising them as well as when we're not there anymore. This was a Christian country. People was raised around Christian principles and Christian values. Not everybody was a Christian, but what marked society and what the norm was in society was that of a Christian leaning, decency, righteousness, goodness, so forth and so on. In such a society as that, then even the bad people are not as bad as they can be. I mean, you take the bad things that was done many years ago as compared to the bad things that are done now, and you see two different worlds altogether. I mean, we used to go out and the worst thing we done was went out and drank some beer, and that's bad enough, but that was the worst thing we did. Now our children are hitting meth and crack and all kinds of different pills that actually hooks them the first time that they take it and absolutely and completely destroys their life, their physical appearance, their minds, destroys it, sometimes with just one shot. We live in a de-Christianized America. We live in the America that the liberal wants. The Bible makes it clear that we are, speaking of those who have been born again, that we are a law unto ourselves. That means that those who are bound by the laws of Christ, born again with the nature of Christ living in them, does not need a law to tell them not to break in their neighbor's house and steal something. You could leave your house unlocked and with $100,000 jewelry laying on your table, of which I could see through your door, and that jewelry would never be touched and your door would never be entered. And I don't need a law to stop me from doing that. I don't need the threat of going to prison or jail. I'm simply not going to steal from you, period. Because there is a moral law connected to that, and we just don't do it. That's what a Christian upbringing, that's what Christianity does. It creates a society of decent human beings. And in a Christian environment, even the ones that's not Christian and the worst among it are marginalized to a point where there are limits that even they won't do. And as I always say, there are exceptions to every rule. But as to the whole, what I'm saying is 100% correct. Now, when we talk about spirituality and the spiritual makeup of this country now, and the fact that politics, wealth, riches, jobs, is not going to change the spiritual condition of this nation. It simply can't. Whenever you take based people, whenever you take addicted people, then all a good job does to them is enables them to become more addicted because they're not a law unto themselves and they can't control themselves. It was said long ago by some of our forefathers that there's no possible way for a democracy to ever last except it be filled with Christian people. And it is true. For all of the democracies and the land of freedom has always been Christian people. And the destruction of that freedom, that liberty has always been that the backsliding of the nations running contrary to God and the evil dog-like nature come in, seize power, with great swelling words, a flattery that the Bible warns you is a snare, a trap set for your feet. And these evil, dog-like natures, takes control, and they thirst and they hunger for power because they are weak souls. Anytime you see a push for something extreme outwardly, it is the manifestation of the opposite inwardly. When you see people that deck themselves out like Christmas trees, it's usually because they're empty and they're naked inside. When you see people who are the life of the party and the center of attention, you're oftentimes dealing with the most lonely person in the entire room and the most insecure person. That's just the way it works. So when you see these people lusting for power, as we see this bunch that calls themselves Democrats doing, that nothing is off the table. The butchering of anybody's name, their reputation, nothing. Nothing is off the table. These are brute beasts without question. And they will slaughter anybody to get their power. And it is because they are weak-souled. And to watch them, to listen to them, to see how they operate, will manifest that clear as a bell. So they need the outward control and power to feel that emptiness and that weakness that lives inside of them. Now, as we talk about weapons of mass destruction, I want to share with you one of the weapons of mass destruction, and there's many. Certain types of guns are weapons of mass destruction. You've got nuclear bombs that's weapons of mass destruction. You've got a lot of different types of weapons that can be categorized as weapons of mass destruction. But when the spiritual brain is dead and you cannot focus and put in proper perspectives what really is, you can't see some of the most dangerous things. They're never even considered. They're never even spoken of. But the Word of God tells us about it. That's why He tells us, he that hath an ear to hear, let him hear. He that hath eyes to see, let him see. It's because it shows us things and reveals to us things that the world around us, no matter how intellectual they are, they just simply can't comprehend it. So what weapon is it that I'm talking about tonight that is used 24 hours a day? What weapon is it that is definitely a weapon of mass destruction and one that we are seeing used every single day of the week? It is called the tongue, the mouth. Listen what the Bible tells us in the book of James, chapter 3 and verse 6. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. The tongue. You see, the Bible makes it clear of the 4 degrees of sin that I've so oftentimes shared with you. The sinner, the evil, the wicked, and then the abominable. The abomination is the worst of all sins. The Bible tells us that the slanderer, the discord sower, the gossiper, the talebearer, all of those statements and terms comes from the same basic word, and it is the slanderer. Now, the slanderer is the first name biblically that was attributed to Satan. That's what Satan is. He is a slanderer. He slanders. So if you want to see the children of the devil at work, you can mark them by 2 things. One by envy, the other by slander. Those are the 2 natures of Satan that is most clearly marks his personality. Envy and slander. And where you find one, you almost always find the other. The Bible tells us where there is envy and strife, there is every evil work. There is nothing that they won't do when they envy and they have strife. The weapon of choice is this fiery tool that is set on fire of hell, and it is the uncontrolled mouth, it is the slanderous tongue, and this slander the Bible speaks of, this sowing of discord, this setting nature on fire with this fiery serpent that the Bible says is inside our mouths. The Bible reveals to us that it is an abomination. He that soweth discord among the brethren, the Bible said, is an abomination. Not just a sinner, not just evil, not just wicked. It is the worst you can be. And this weapon of mass destruction is being used on a massive scale today to accuse and blame people of things they have not done, and has been proven they have not done it. Now, as we talk about our nation on Sunday night's programs, as we deal with what's going on in our world, we cannot help but look at the powers that be. That is, basically, a Democrat and a Republican. Now, I would say this first. President Trump went into Washington with the idea that he was going to drain the swamp. Now, since he has been there are like 11 senators or congressmen, Republicans, that is simply going to drop out of the next election, resign. There was 10 or so that dropped out in the last election. 20-something, probably it is altogether, of Republicans that has just quit their places of power after Trump got in. That reveals to us something that is vitally important. When we talk about the swamp, this mess as we have seen it, that swamp has mainly been on the Republican side. Because within the Republican Party were liars, cowards, and men who do nothing. You see, the other side are notable, known snakes, vipers, without question. Abominations. These people who call them Democrats has no regard for any human's life. All that they regard is their power, and they will do anything to get it. You have to, as Jesus said, what is meted out must be measured and meted out to you again. The Bible speaks of balance, telling us that balance of a just weight is the Lord's delight, but the imbalance, again, is an abomination. There is only one way to contend with someone who is fighting you with 100 pounds of power. The only way to balance that fight, that war, is to return to them 100 pounds of power. There is no other way to balance, period. If you've got scales and you put 5 pounds on this side, there is no way to balance that scale but 5 pounds on the other side. This side cannot talk death to you, murder to you, butchery to you. This side can play by no rules. And then your side pretend as though it wants to be above the fray and play by all the rules. You're simply dead in the water. And that's what this Republican bunch has done for many years. In other words, it's very simple. The snake that you can see is never really the danger. The true danger of even life and death always rests in the snake that you can't see. One that poses itself as something else, as the Lord Jesus put it, the wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, with that said, let's look at this fiery serpent of hell. We have seen these shooters that has come out here in the last week, and all that is on the media now is the El Paso shooting. Because this guy had some extremist views and seemed to echo some of the things that Trump said in his racist rants, of which does not include Donald Trump, for there is not one racist statement that has ever come out of the man's mouth. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. But the El Paso shooting is being blamed completely on Donald Trump, relentlessly, 24 hours a day, nonstop. The Ohio shooting, the man who did the shooting in Ohio was an avowed Democrat, a follower of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. He said that he was going to have socialism one way or the other. In his tweets, he has tweeted, labeling himself a leftist, bemoaning the election of Donald Trump. He's a supporter of Elizabeth Warren and encouraging people to cut fences of immigration detention centers, and an avowed socialist. But not one single word, as he has spouted out all of those catchphrases of the entire Democratic Party, siding with Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and the whole Democratic Party that spouts this stuff out 24 hours a day. Not one single word in the media, in the news, has linked this man in Ohio for the shooting to Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Nobody has even suggested that Bernie Sanders was the blame. And you remember the guy who went out on the baseball field and shot up the Republicans on that baseball field, crippling one of them, was a Bernie Sanders supporter. But not a word is said about that. The shootings that has went on otherwise, where it was notable, so nobody blamed Bernie Sanders. Right now, this shooter in Ohio, nobody has mentioned one single word about Bernie Sanders caused that. But the one in El Paso, it is all Donald Trump's fault. What is that, brothers and sisters? That is slander. That is the devil's work. It is a weapon of mass destruction used by an entire political party and those that are conspiring with them, call the mainstream media, to poison a man's name. While you have the exact opposite taking place just days in between, and not a single word mentioned about his leftism and being connected to Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. Here is the racist quote language. They are calling this statement of Donald Trump racist. Donald Trump says we are being invaded. Let's use logic and reasoning for just a second. An invasion. Mr. Trump sees hundreds of thousands of people storming our border illegally. And he says it is an invasion. Well, what does the word invasion mean? The word invasion means an incursion by a large number of people or things into a place or sphere of activity. It means an unwelcome intrusion into another's domain. Well, we know that through the polls it's been taken. The number one concern in the whole nation right now is border security. Now, there may be some politicians who don't mind you entering into our domain, but the nation as a whole does. So whenever Mr. Trump says it is an invasion, his words are not racism. They are supported and backed up by the meaning of the word and the dictionary. Mr. Trump then is accused of racism because he said some bad people are crossing our borders. And so the media takes this with their lying, fiery serpent tongue and says he's calling every brown person bad people. Let's go back to some logic for just a moment. Logically, if there is 100,000 people crossing into your border, do you think that there are some bad people amongst that 100,000? Can you go gather a group of individuals, 100,000 of them, and ever hope that there's not a bad person among them? Can you actually scan a professional football stadium with 75,000, 100,000 in that stadium, and you not know that somewhere in the midst of that 100,000 is a bad person? Certainly you can. So, to say invasion is a correctly defined word. There is no racism in that. It's logical. It's the truth. It's definable. To say that there are some bad people crossing our borders in this bunch that's coming illegally is a simple statement of fact that no human being alive could deny. So, the words that they use to make Mr. Trump a racist are all logical. But let's look at this and see if we can find the logic in this.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Before Mr. Trump even really gets in the office, this celebrity with hundreds of thousands and even millions of followers wants to blow up the White House. But she's just exercising her freedom of speech. Mr. Trump uses the word invasion, and he's a racist. Where is the logic? Where is the reasoning behind this nutcase that wants to blow up the White House? Where's the reasoning and the logic behind this? This lady, a celebrity, with hundreds of thousands of followers and a well-known name, holds up on public television what appears to be the severed head of the President of the United States. But she's just exercising her freedom to speak and express herself. But Mr. Trump says amongst 100,000 people, there's some bad people, and he's a racist. He also uses the term fake news. And you don't need any more than what I'm presenting to you right here and right now to know he's exactly right. They are lying, demonic slanderers is what they are. And yes, fake. What logic is to be found in this?
Which was just released yesterday. It shows Snoop shooting a toy gun at a clown like Trump. Florida Senator Marco Rubio has also criticized the scene, telling TMZ that the rapper shouldn't have done that.
This is Doper R. Kelly, or Doper, whatever, is it Snoop Doggy Dogg, I'm sorry, smoking his joint in this video and putting a gun to the head. Again, a man who has 1 million followers. All three of these people have hundreds of thousands and millions of followers. And they present severed heads of the president. They speak of blowing up the White House on public platforms and a public video showing the likeness of the president being shot in the head. You see, the problem with this whole thing is and has been and will be forever. These people that call themselves Democrats are free to show severed heads. They are free to show men pretending to shoot the president in the head. They are free to threaten to blow up the White House. They're free to say anything they want to say, do anything they want to do. The governor of Virginia right now, pictures of him in blackface and a Ku Klux Klan hat. Not a word said among the Democrats. He's still in office. This bunch, what they hate, and what this is all about, is this bunch cannot tolerate nor stand, nor will they allow any human being to talk back to them. They are as a bunch of spoiled, rotten children who was let go for years and years and years by the covered up snakes of the Republican Party who petted their little heads. And they cannot tolerate anyone else exercising their freedom of speech. They cannot tolerate anyone contradicting them. They are the only ones that have the right to speak. They are the only ones that has the right to do. And then everything they cause, they blame it on somebody else.
I'm sick of this race and divide, and CNN is perfect at doing that. It's always divide and conquer. People have the right to choose whatever they want. What does that got to do with Donald Trump? He's not a racist. I'm sick of that. It's a scam, and I know it's not going to get on CNN. We're sick of you media.
Take a load off of you. Just put it on my back and I'll carry it too. You look like you could use a day or two. Get yourself some rest now, and while you do, I'll carry that load for you. All of these troubles are not yours alone, 'cause you my brothers and my sisters, and this is our home. Won't you take yourself a day or two and get yourself some rest now, and while you do, I'll carry that load for you. That's the way it should be. I help you and you help me. We got to live as brothers. We got to have some love one toward another. I'd like to take a load off of you. Just put it on my back and I'll carry it too. Like you could use a day or two. Get yourself some rest now, and while you do, I'll carry that load for you. It should be. I help you and you help me. We got to live as brothers. There got to be some love one toward another.